for any of you that don't know, I'm Hannah. I stream giving music business and marketing advice in the Hell Yes community. And today I have a very special guest on, Jaime Sloane. She is the Global Communications Manager for Ultra Worldwide, and she owns her own company called JSloane Creative, where she does publicity for different artists and different companies, record labels, and stuff like that. So she is quite the expert when it comes to music publicity and the music industry. So it's such an honor to have her on here to answer your guys' questions and to interview her and all of that. So hello, Jaime.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Your background, how did you decide that you wanted to get into publicity, like music publicity, or just the music industry in general?
Yeah, I've always loved music and writing. I grew up, writing for my high school newspaper. In college, I continued blogging. I also did some marketing and promo for local shows in Gainesville where I went to school. And then when I graduated, I transitioned less from doing the, straight up music journalism and more into PR marketing because number one, it's just easier to make a living. All my friends who are freelance journalists, they hustle and they do great, but it's really tough to do that. So if you're interested in writing and working in music, but you want a little bit more stability, I would say that music PR is definitely a more attainable route to take. But yeah, I grew up, obsessed with music. I was sneaking into shows to write about them, not, to party when I was 14. So this has always been kind of my bread and butter. And when I graduated college, I got the first job I applied for, which was to be the PR marketing coordinator at DMX, Steve Aoki's record label. So I moved out to LA, and then about 6 months later, I was promoted to be the head of PR there. And then I've had other various positions doing music PR since then, leading up to today. As you mentioned, Hannah, I'm in-house at Ultra. We do our flagship festival in Miami, and then we have about 27 global properties around the world. And then when work slowed down because of COVID, obviously festivals weren't happening for a while, I also started to take on my other independent client, JSloane Creative, and a handful, mostly in the electronic music space, so indie leaning, but artists, record labels, a few other music festivals as well.
Awesome. So I'm curious, is your position at Ultra global communications manager? Is that kind of a fancy word for publicity, or is that different than publicity?
So my role encompasses a lot more than just PR, which is why it is global communications. Like I said, I do the PR for our flagship Miami festival, and then we have festivals all over the world. For example, we did Ultra Taiwan in November because Taiwan is an island and was able to kind of thwart COVID. So we have me setting the strategy, working with the headliners to see what their availabilities are, making sure that interviews are set up, making sure press schedules are done. But I also work in tandem with publicists in each market, since I don't speak Taiwanese. I don't know how to properly pitch the Taiwanese media. Mm-hmm. So I set the strategy and goals and deliverables, and then make sure that all of our branding and messaging is aligning with the Ultra vision. And then outside of the, what you think of as traditional festival PR, I copy edit most of the content that goes out from Ultra, whether that's socials. I help write brand sponsorship proposals. I have put together marketing strategies, that are copy heavy. We edited the merch. So anything that really is coming out that's in the written word is kind of coming by my desk. And then I also work more abstractly. I set up our partnership with SoulCycle, and I got us on Spotify, and I was the one leading the calls with TikTok. So it's a lot more goes into it than a traditional. This is the PR, you're pitching, and then you're getting coverage, and that's it. But I also help to run our influencer campaigns. So a lot of different things, which is really cool because I like to be autonomous and just get my hands dirty.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're like involved in a little bit of everything. That's
Yeah,
awesome. A lot of marketing, it sounds like, but that kind of goes hand in hand.
right.
But that's
Totally.
super cool that you kind of are so involved with such a big company and stuff.
Thank
Um,
you.
when did you start that position? I don't.
I started in summer of 2019.
Okay, so kind of right in time for the pandemic. Great
Yeah,
timing.
I mean, I had a good 10 months. I
Yeah,
got to do Ultra Japan, Ultra Europe, ADE, so, and we'll be
yeah, just waiting on that Miami Fest.
back.
So
Yes, next March.
awesome. I'm excited. I don't know if I'll make that one, but
Okay.
maybe. So from your experience, cuz I know like we can, find a definition online that tells you what a publicist does, but it's always great hearing it from the person that actually does it. So from your experience, what does a publicist do? What's kind of your day-to-day like when you're working with artists versus like a huge company like Ultra?
Hey, yeah. So I guess we can just start with the festival because we haven't started talking about that. So, for doing press for Ultra, or I'm working with another festival called Gem and Jam. I'm working with Halloween for those festivals. The first thing you want to do is announce that it's happening. So put out a press release, send that to the media contacts, whether for something like Ultra Miami, you're talking to the music outlets like UMDM, Billboard, but you're also pitching Miami New Times, send all the local papers because you want to hit the music fans from wherever they're going to travel from. And then you also want to hit the local people who already live there. So, it's less costly to come in and attend. So that's the first thing is just the outreach, getting the word out, whether it's announcing the dates, announcing the tickets are on sale, announcing the lineup, announcing vendors, and then as your campaign progresses and you get closer to the festival date, you'll have more announcements. Like we'll do an announcement of the cool food vendors that we have, or the different artists, or the second phase of artists. The set times, etc. So just kind of keeping a natural flow, a steady flow of information coming out, so you can continue to try to generate hype and buzz and get people, to want to come to purchase tickets. So that's kind of on a granular level. And then more creatively, I like to set up stories that are more than just a news post saying Ultra is happening on the stage with these. So, for example, last year, 2019, 2020, that just didn't happen. It was Carl Cox's 20th year at Ultra. Ultra's been around for 22 years.
Wow.
That would have been the 23rd. So to celebrate, we did a look back. We partnered with Billboard and we did a look back on the top 20 moment. So was it him playing in a little tent on the beach when it was still on the Miami Beach? Was it when he finally, he debuted some of his new album, whatever it was, and photos and videos, and that was something that I put together conceptually. I worked with Carl Cox's team and the Ultra team who'd been there for a while, come up with the content, and then I pitched it to the media partner, or not partner, but the person that the outlet that published it, Billboard, and worked with them to get them the assets. So doing creative storytelling like that interests people on a more captivating level than here's an announcement, this is what's happening, less cut and dry. It's less like who, what, where, when, why. It's more engaging. So trying to do cool stories like that. We did a really cool shoot, a photo shoot with different looks that you can wear to Ultra and different styles, and we work with the Style magazine on that. We've done breakout interviews with some of the headliners on what they're bringing to the festival. Sophie Tucker was all about creating like inclusive spaces on the dance floor, so that was supposed to run in Forbes. There was another technologically focused piece that was supposed to run in Miami New Times. So anyway, it's just kind of figuring out what stories that you can tell about the client, and then figuring out appropriate outlets who have the readership that would be interested. Like I said with Forbes, that was more kind of like business back end technology focused, so that's what that means. So figuring out what you have to offer, what makes your client or project interesting, and then what's the best way to translate it. So that's really, and then of course doing the on-site press. So, if Respect by Region, where Hannah writes, wants to come cover it, I would ask them to do some preview coverage to make sure that their fans know about it and it's not just, somebody wanting to come to go for free. So hopefully they've already posted about the festival then. They'll come on site, maybe do some interviews on site. I'll run the media area. Ultra's really cool. It's boat, it's on the water. So, but typically a festival, you know, you're in a tent, you got some water, some Wi-Fi, and the writers are there. You can conduct your interviews there. And then me as the publicist, I'm making sure that everybody's on schedule, making sure the interviews are happening. For high tier, like top tier media, I'll take them around on golf cart rides.
Oh, nice.
Help with, you know, video interviews, whatever is happening that's just going to get the best coverage for the festival. And then every night I'll send out nightly recaps of the highlights. So, you know, if Hannah was hypothetically at Ultra and she was watching Rez, but she didn't see the Tiesto brought out Marshmallow, I don't know, I'm just making things up. But however, if she wants to cover it, it doesn't always have to be just her opinion. It's also good to share the big highlights. I would put that with some photos and some, you know, highlights from the day. And that way everybody can report on it on a whole instead of just, you know, if you're just really into dubstep and you only want to tell the dubstep shows, but your outlet covers everything, you want to make sure that you know, you have like a whole and all-encompassing approach. So, and then, you know, sending out the press release after, saying how many people came, if it's about, the highlights, and just making sure that everybody posts their stuff and doesn't just come for a free ticket. So that's festival press, I would say, in a nutshell. And then, you know, working with artists or labels isn't super dissimilar. It's all about the same goal. Figuring out what's interesting about your project, what makes you unique, why people should care, and then figuring out what people are likely to care. So setting your targets. So for example, I'm working with like an amazing girl called Petty Wild, who used to be she still is, she's a choreographer and dancer by trade. She used to be on Broadway, and then she, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6, when she moved to LA, I forget exactly when, she started DJing and producing. So she has a really interesting storyline because she just choreographed and directed music video for Zed, but she's also doing her solo project. So there's a lot to work with. So for her, I listen to the music. Okay, it's a lot of underground stuff. So who am I going to target? People like Mixag, Electronic Groove, Music is for Lovers, 6 a.m. group, the Underground Music Authorities. That's going to be covering, you know, sonically. Okay, these are the outlets that write about underground music. But then, to take it another level further, you can get creative with, I just got a really good email from Paper Magazine. They want to do an interview with Penny, and that is, you know, more of a lifestyle, art, and culture outlet. So we've already covered our bases trying to get or securing the underground outlets, because then we want to get that to the underground music fans who read that. But then we also want to expose Penny to different outlets, different readerships, different demographics. And the way we do that is to get people, outlets like Paper, who cater to a much different readership. That's why it's good to land those crossover pieces, because you're not just talking to the same electronic music fans over and over through electronic music outlets. You're kind of broadening your reach. And then, you know, I'm sure everybody on here probably grew up around the same time when the blogs were the curatorial force. We had to go to the blogs to get the new music. I was in college sitting in my dorm room, like ripping music illegally from the blogs because there was no Spotify, there was no anything. So these days, the music comes out at 9 p.m. the night before. Friday is Friday's release day, and Spotify has it on the night before. So really, the blogs are kind of serving, I think, a different purpose, because I don't think a lot of people are necessarily going to blogs to figure out what new music came out today. I think it's more for storytelling and narrative. So I try to do a lot of interviews and stuff, you know, different types of content, a lot of DJ mixes. And that's kind of where the marketing and promo background also comes in. So my strategy is very holistic. I want to get the blogs, I want to get the write-ups, I want to get the interviews, I want to get, you know, anything that's literally written. And then on top of that, there's other forms of promo that I've been exploring. So I pitch to YouTube channels, I pitch to Spotify playlists. You know, if a playlist has 100,000 followers, I would love for them to get my artists on there, and hopefully you'll see your plays go up. I pitch radio, and so I'll do like guest mixes for them, but also interviews, Instagram takeovers, meet and greets. We work with Reddit a lot on the / electronic music thread. I just had an artist called Motez, who is out of Australia, do a Reddit AMA about his EP and get, you know, almost 400 comments. So people that were fans that found it through his social, but also people that were just engaging with that Reddit thread already. And so that kind of goes back to everything I was explaining. It all kind of ties together. It's the same goal, which is you're trying to put the music out to these different formats, outlets, whether it's Reddit, radio, to try to get the music into the ears and to have people read and hear from all different places, not just, you know, the same people who are reading the same blogs, but just really diversifying who's going to be exposed to your project, whether that's a festival, an album launch, whatever it is.
Awesome. Yeah, you cover it all. So a lot of people, like, they look at blogs and think that it's like not worth it because, you know, people aren't really going on blogs and you're not really going to get like a ton of streams from that blog. So people are like kind of iffy about putting their time towards that. But can you, I personally believe that blogs are super important because one, you know, the storytelling aspect, but two, like it helps build that buzz. Like even if you're not having a ton of people playing your music from the blog, it shows that people are covering you and it shows that people are interested in you, and that kind of creates like a domino effect. Can you kind of is there any other like kind of reasoning that you could tell artists out there of why they should be getting their stuff on blogs and they shouldn't think that it's a waste or anything?
Yeah. You know, there's a few different schools of thought, so it's a really good question. I like to work a lot with developing apps because I feel like they're hungrier and it means more to them. It's more impactful. Like Tiesto is going to get covered either way, whether he has PR coming out or not, because he has such strong socials and such a strong audience. So talking about, you know, developing apps, which is probably anybody that's here watching this stream, yeah, there's definitely a lot less engagement than in the heyday where we had to go to This Song Is Sick, or, you know, Zach just brought up Stony Roads. Like, we had to go to these blogs, scroll, read, listen, and that's how we consume music. That's not typically how most people consume music anymore. However, there are a lot of people who still do like to read about music, and I think a lot of it is getting that social engagement afterwards. So, like, as Hannah knows, the blog that she works with, they have a really big, you know, social media presence. So even if the article or the interview that she writes only gets X amount of full reads, we all know that attention span is short these days. If my artist, my client gets tagged in her blog's post, and that goes out to lots of people, that's another way for people to discover. So that's something to consider. Then, as you mentioned, it's kind of about generating the buzz. So again, mostly talking about developing apps here, but if you're self-releasing or you're releasing on a very small label and you want to get to Big V or Ultra or, you know, Armada, whatever, big electronic music or any label, I would imagine this is the same across genres. If you have a write-up from Ear Milk, Dancing Astronaut, Billboard, whatever it is, smaller ones, it's just another way to set you apart when you're pitching your music to that label. Or similarly, for your agent who's going to pitch you for shows, it's another, like I think you used the word clout. It just shows, okay, this person is someone, and this is somehow setting them apart in a sea of bedroom producers where it's so oversaturated and anyone can put out music, right? Like DistroKid, one of the biggest distributors, accepts music from anyone. There's no barrier to entry, which is beautiful, but it also just makes the market really murky. So a good way to set yourself apart is to have all these things in your arsenal for when, you know, you're trying to get booked for shows or trying to get booked, trying to get a record signed to a label, stuff like that. And then, of course, for social media is one of the most important tools for an artist. I think maybe only second to musicality. And you have to have something to put in your socials. Not everybody has money to hire a photographer to follow them around like Paris Hilton, you know? So if you have like a screenshot of a cool write-up from Dancing Astronaut or like a cool quote from Billboard, whatever it is, Rolling Stone, if we're going to get really, you know, lucky and get a Rolling Stone coverage, having that on your socials, again, legitimizes you, but it's just good to keep churning out content because social media, you know, at least Instagram, like the way the algorithm works, if you're not posting your post, if you post rarely, it goes out to less followers than if you post all the time. And I'm not saying post 6 times a day, please don't. Anyone's going to take any advice. But, you know, you want to be consistent and have something always coming out for your fans. And that's also a good way to, you know, hopefully someone will share it. Like maybe you have a fan and then they see that you got a Dancing Astronaut right up and then they'll Instagram message that to their friend. It's all kind of grassroots. So, you know, going back to your original question, does it matter? People aren't reading it. It's changed. changed. It's definitely changed. I think that the point and the goal is different, but I think it's still very important. There are things that I'll say, personally, I don't think it's worth it to spend money on, like developing acts. I'll say, I don't really think you should spend $5,000 on a music video because I don't think anybody's really going to see it. I would rather you put that money into Instagram ads, Facebook ads, boosting the post if you're throwing a show. There are definitely some things I think that people think they should do because it's how it's been done. You know, music videos are doing better, I think, during the plays, and we see now Spotify is uploading full music videos on their platform, but for developing acts, that's something I would cut out. However, I think PR marketing is definitely a really good tool for you to grow and legitimize yourself.
100%. And going off of what you're saying about posting the press on Instagram and the different social platforms, like a way that I've seen some artists do it is I've seen artists either, you know, release their song, wait a week or two for all the press to come in, and then screenshots and do like a carousel of like, you know, thanks to all these people that covered me, and it's a carousel of little glimpse of the write-up. So I think that's a great idea. And also I usually suggest, I don't know how other people feel about this, but, and I've seen artists do it, is like having one of those little like highlight bubbles in your biography and uploading the press to your story and saving it to that. So, because if you have like an industry executive or something that's kind of like scoping you out, maybe they're interested in you, like having that bubble, like that could make or break it. Like they could see that and be like, oh my God, this person is covered by Ear Milk and Rolling Stone and all these huge publications. Like this is definitely someone that people are buzzing about and people, you know, are fans of and stuff like that. So that's my tip bouncing off of that.
It's a great tip.
Let me see my next question. I literally have like a billion questions for you, so I was just gonna ask some, see where the conversation goes, and then pick and choose. Let's see. So you kind of touched on like social media. I was gonna ask like for you to, you know, stress the importance of it, but you kind of did. A lot of artists are like, I don't need social media or I don't want to do it, but guys, you have to. I'm sorry, you have to.
Listen, nobody, I think maybe in recent years, some of the kids, but nobody I know, at least my peers, like got into producing or DJing because they're like good at content. You know, it's like a necessary evil, and that's also why you can hire a social media person for pretty cheap. You know, there's lots of people. If you're a developing artist, you can also work with a developing social media person who's kind of just bootstrapping and figuring it out. Like, you don't have to spend millions of dollars if it's really not your thing and you really don't feel like you could self-teach, which most people can. You know, YouTube University, it's not probably going to be the most interesting content, but that's okay. Or if you have a little bit of a budget, you can hire people on the internet that will help you create this presence. But yeah, regardless, like you gotta be posting.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, like, you know, when you're first starting out, you're a small artist, you're not really making much money. You know, you probably can't afford to really hire anyone, let alone a publicist. So, like, what do you suggest? I guess, do you have any like specific resources or advice for artists that are kind of looking to be like their own publicist? Like where they can learn or just things that they can do to kind of practice and stuff?
Yeah, totally. I actually wrote the lesson plan and coursework for I don't know if you know Point Blank Music School, but based in the UK, and they have lots of music business classes like PR, social media marketing, whatever it is. So I actually wrote a course for them. So, you know, if you are trying to actually enrich yourself in that way, you can take a course like that. And I think it was like 8 weeks. It's for people who are studying like all different types of music business. Like you'd be taking all those, but I think they do offer it a la carte. I'm sure there are some opportunities here if you really want to dig deep. But otherwise, you know, like I said, like YouTube University, like just Googling how to correctly pitch, and it'll kind of, I've seen different guides online. The best thing is, you know, you want to make sure everything's spelled well, and you want to make sure you're reaching out to people who cover your genre and style. So, for example, if you are making bass music and you think you sound like So Down, so I would just kind of look and see, okay, did Dancing Astronaut cover So Down's last? Well, I guess the first step before this is figuring out what the big music blogs are, and that's really just reading, finding, going down the rabbit hole on Twitter or Instagram. If you follow one of them, I don't know if you guys have seen, it drops down and gives you suggestions, and you can kind of just figure it out that way. Okay, who are the big players? So you want to familiarize yourself with these people. Identify a writer who is covering that genre or that type of artist, whatever it is. And then the next part sounds kind of unprofessional, but this is the reality. And I see Christina's in the chat, so she'll probably get a kick out of this, is just Google stalking. So, you know, there's two schools of thought. What I was taught is not to reach out to people on social media because it's unprofessional. However, the way I connected with our lovely host, Hannah, is literally DMing her and be like, yo, I really liked your article on this. I'm working with this artist. I think you might like it. And then she was like, hey, I really like what you're doing in your career. Maybe we can have a call. I was like, yeah, of course. Like, happy to help each other. So, you know, I think it's just about like being genuine and nice. I think that, I don't want to say it's common sense, but don't annoy people, right? Like if people are not answering you, then maybe they don't want to be reached out to, or maybe they don't like it, or maybe they have a death in the family, like you don't know what's going on. So really I would say like reach out maybe once and do another follow-up like 2 weeks later if it's a complete stranger. But I think it's about making like genuine connections. Like I live on social media and I know it's like not great for my mental health, but I'm always like seeing what the writers are doing. And then if I'm going to pitch someone like the editor at URDM, like, yo, how was the Alesso show? It looks sick. Instead of being like, hey, can you do this for me? You want to make sure that people feel that they're being engaged with and that you're speaking to them as humans and you're not just asking them to do things. And Christina brings up a good point. No expectations. You know, if you're really doing this yourself, I would just be happy if somebody responds to you because there are so many people like me or Christina in the chat or, you know, other people who are doing PR for a long time that have made these connections, and it takes a while. So don't be discouraged. If you're going to bootstrap it, it's great. And start with the small outlets too. You know, you don't really have to be going for your EDM or even like EDM sauce. Like at the top 5, like that's a great get if you can get it. But otherwise, like if you're a small artist, don't expect to be on a big outlet unless you have spent money for someone who is connected to those outlets. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I think that, you know, just be reasonable about your reach and your clout, because going back to what we were saying about the pitching, if the music's great, cool, but if there's nothing interesting that's setting this artist apart and they haven't done anything, most writers are not going to really give it the time of day because their inbox is flooded with artists that they already know and love. So if you're going to try to pitch someone on an artist that they haven't, like heard of, it's already an uphill battle. So if you haven't had any big label releases, everything's self-release, you haven't played a festival, you don't have any little things to say, oh, this is a point of reference of who this artist is and why you should care, it will be tough for you to get in that door. And so, you know, going back to just setting your expectations, being realistic. And then, did we talk about Submit Hub? I don't think so. So no. I don't really use it because luckily I have good contacts. But basically, for those who are not familiar, Submit Hub is a website where you can upload your music, whether it's before, so if you want to submit it, you upload your music and then you pay $1, 50 cents, whatever it is, to submit it to these outlets. And then you can check off different options. So if you need feedback, if you want someone to say, like, I don't think JSloane on there, like Dummy Magazine, really cool kind of underground outlet. You can say, hey, here's my music, like, I need feedback. I think they need it to higher fee. And they'll tell you, hey, I like the synth, but the vocal really wasn't doing it for me. They'll give you exactly what they think. And try also, take this with a grain of salt, because you're also sending this to more typically unpaid writers who don't have music education. So just because 10 people pass on your song, please don't, shut down your whole life and think that you shouldn't make music anymore. But if you want to get some feedback and figure out, okay, this is where this will fit, or this is where it won't fit, great. And then a lot of the time they do accept it, and they can put your music on their Spotify playlist or do a write-up, whatever it is. And that's kind of, if you don't have money for PR, that might be a good place for you to start, because then you can also familiarize yourself with the outlets and who has 20,000 Instagram followers and who has 200. And if you're a developing act, the outlet with 200 Instagram followers might be more realistic shot for you. So Submit Hub could be a good thing for people who are just bootstrapping it.
Yeah.
And yes, Christina brings up a good point. To just tell your story, what makes you interesting. So going back to our Penny Wild example, she's a choreographer, she directed videos for Zed, RL Grind, and that's how I start my pitch off. Okay, this person who's done X, Y, and Z has performed at Splash Fest and Coachella and has gone from Broadway to the Coachella stage, whatever, I wrote something cute. And then here, listen to the music. You don't want to put a whole book because people get bored. So, and it's a lot of fine tuning, and it's hard to give, it's one-on-one, 101 on something I've been doing for like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you want to set yourself apart besides the music. So what labels have you released on? Have you done any shows? I'm working with another developing act called ASW, which stands for A Single Wave. And he has struggled with bipolar disorder. He volunteers for a nonprofit called Crisis Text Line, where people who are suicidal who don't feel up to making a phone call, they can text.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole idea is to bring that person to a state of calm. So wrote an EP called the Dahlia EP, and the whole EP's goal is to bring listeners to a state of calm. And then on top of that, he started a live stream series. So we did one with Space Yacht, we did one on Popgang, we're doing one with Spin Magazine. And so he did Twitch streams where he was DJing and raising money. We've gotten corporate sponsors who are matching our donations. But anyway, because of all that, this artist who didn't really have a lot to say in terms of this is all the big things I've done musically, this was a great story. And day 2 of the campaign, we got him LA. So, it's really about making sure, if you think about it, if you were a writer, like, you want to listen to music, cool, but like, you want to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
You're pitching just for music, like, that would be more for a Spotify curator who doesn't really care who you are, if you're famous or if you're nobody. But if you're pitching a writer, thinking about it, they want to write. They want to write something interesting, not just, this was bass, and then the bass dropped, So it's all about kind of telling that story. And if you're a developing act, don't stress if you're not, an Olympian, or your dad wasn't someone famous guitarist. Like, if you don't have something that's super setting you apart, like, it's not the end of the world, but it certainly helps if you do.
Definitely. And yeah, from the perspective of a writer, like, I always love to see, like, Jamie, her press releases are always so solid. Like, it's a lot to work with. Like, you got to give them something to work with because yeah, as a writer, like, we can come up with something out of nothing, but we're trying to be efficient. Like, this is our job. This is what we have to do. We have to be efficient with our work. So the more information you give us, the more you give us to work with, the easier it is for us to do our job. And if we see like, oh, you're giving us all this information, like, I personally feel like it's gonna make the person more likely to cover you because, yes, it's still going to be work for them, but it's going to be less work when you give them a lot more to work with.
Right.
So yeah, always keep that in mind. Like, you want to give them something to work with. Yeah.